Welcome to the Catholic Community Scripture Study, held at St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church in Jackson, Michigan. I will be your host, Todd Gale, as we walk our way through the book of Genesis, a line-by-line study of the first book of the sacred scriptures. Hello, my friends. Grace and peace be with you. This sad soap opera continues as we read through chapters 30 and 31 of Genesis. This is just a horribly sad situation. When we left off, Leah is having children. She's having the first 4 boys. Reuben, look, a boy. Simeon, hear me, love me, I'm having your babies. Levi, be attached to me, please, Jacob. And finally, she names the 4th one, Praise. Judah means praise God. So it seems like Leah's peace and praise with the Lord comes with the birth of the 4th child, but it doesn't last very long. Rachel is getting frustrated. She blames Jacob. Jacob kind of talks harshly with her. What's going on with these opening lines here in chapter 30? Ephraim the Syrian, everyone's favorite Syrian, he embellished the story a bit. He wrote that Abraham, Grandpa Abraham, right, had prayed over the barren Sarah, and she was heard after 100 years. Isaac prayed over Rebekah, and he was heard after 20 years. So Rachel thinks this is happening because Jacob has not been praying for her. And Jacob says, who am I? God? Right? Just be patient. That's basically what's going on according to Ephraim the Syrian. Well, Rachel, out of frustration, gives her maid Bilhah to Jacob. Now, as a concubine, this didn't work so well with Grandpa Abe and Grandma Sarah. So are you sure you want to do this? So Jacob now has slept with Rachel, with Leah, and with Bilhah. And the phrase here, to bear a child on my knees, that's kind of a strange ancient practice of surrogate motherhood and adoption. Some believe that the phrase only refers to a symbolic placement of the child on the knees of the one who is adopting the child, but others think that the reference is that the surrogate is literally sitting on the lap of the adopted mother from the moment of insemination to the moment of the birth, and like they are together the whole time. Very strange culturally compared to the way we would do things today. And when it says that down a little bit that these concubines are married, that Jacob took them in marriage, they're not actually married. They're the concubines. And so Rachel says, God has judged me. He has judged I'm worthy of a baby boy, because her maid Bilhah does have a child. And so they name this child Dan, which means judged. God has judged me worthy. There's the birth of Naphtali or Naphtali. Both are correct. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again, and there's a second child. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister. So she names Naphtali, which means to struggle or to wrestle. It looks like Rachel's kind of rubbing it in a little bit because Leah seemed to have stopped having children. Leah has had 4 children now. And Rachel's saying, just wait, you had 4, but I'm going to pass that 4. Rachel is openly acknowledging a baby competition. I've struggled with my cow sister, and I'm going to win. Yes, sir. Well, then, Leah, she's not going to let her bossy, beautiful sister win. So when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing children and that her sister's maid had started bearing children, Leah got a little panicky, so she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as as the next one in the line, right? So Leah had apparently lost the peace that she had when she named Judah for praise, and now Jacob has slept with 4 women: Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and she said, "Oh, what good fortune!" So she named him Gad, which means good fortune. Leah figured she could use the same surrogate mother method that her sister used. So let's add another mark on Leah's side, right? Leah is winning the race of children 5-2. Then there's the birth of Asher. Leah's maid Zilpah now has a second son. And Leah said, "I am blessed, for the women will call me blessed." So she called his name Asher, which means blessed. I think Leah's been around her mean sister just far too long. Now she is more concerned about the status of the number of children she has than she is about the child himself. There's only one good mother who is blessed among women, and blessed is the fruit of her womb. Leah wants to be called blessed by women. She is not very much like Blessed Mother. So Jacob's 8th son is born to him through Zilpah. Now the score is 6-2. Leah has a 4-baby advantage, right? And then Reuben, the oldest boy, there's this little narrative this picks up in verse 14 that's very interesting. Reuben is probably 8 or 10 years old now, maybe 12. He brings his mother a mandrake. Now, the mandrake is a flowering root. It's called the love apple in Hebrew. They were thought to increase fertility in women. They made a libido spike in the male, so it's considered an ancient aphrodisiac. It's like an ancient form of Viagra. And there's a ton recorded about mandrakes in every single ancient culture from Europe to the Far East. Mandrake will flower for a season with large bell flowers, and then when the root is pulled, it has this strange human-like shape. That's what adds to the mystery and the superstition of this plant. The roots look like a carving almost, like a carving of a figure in worship, a figure on her knees and worshiping the Lord. Like that, it is a very strange plant. And the root mandrake is hallucinogenic. It has narcotics in it. In the right quantities, it can induce a state of unconsciousness. It was actually used for an anesthetic for surgery in the most ancient of days. The root of this plant could be ground up and could be used to reduce pains and could be used to treat melancholy and convulsions and mania. There's a lot of legends about mandrake, but Leah, she has the mandrakes. She knew that if Jacob would just have relations with her, that was a greater likelihood that she would become pregnant again. Well, Aunt Rachel says, "Hey, I tell you what, hey, sweet sister, I pray you, will you please give me the mandrake, and then you can sleep with our husband tonight." Well, we don't know if the effect of the mandrake really works in this way, or if it's more like a placebo, if it's a superstition, if it's magic, or if it's really a wonder root. But under the guiding hand of God, something seems to happen. Leah cries out, "You've taken away my husband!" The hospitality is painful here. So Leah then does give Rachel the mandrake. And Leah tells Jacob, "Okay, buddy, you have to come with me because I purchased you. I bought you. I hired you. You're mine tonight." So she named the child that came from this encounter, she named him Issachar, which means hired or reward. These names are really sad, aren't they? Leah saw the son as a reward from God, right? And she hired Jacob. It was, her higher. She purchased them. And most likely Leah did eat some of this plant before she gave the rest of it to Rachel. Now the score is 7-2. Leah far ahead in the lead. Bases are loaded, and then Leah comes back up to the plate again because she conceives again, and she bears Jacob's son number 10. So there's 6 from Leah herself, 2 from Rachel's maid, 2 from Leah's maid. There's a total of 10 children. Wait a second. Rachel eats the mandrake, and Leah is the one having more children? Leah says, God has endowed me with a good dowry. Now, finally, my husband will honor me. So she names this child Zebulun, honor, honor. Well, afterward, Leah then bears another child. This time, though, this is a daughter, and they called her name Dinah. Dinah means to judge or to govern. And there's a great line from a Bible study from David Gulak online. He says, the wives fought each other as if they were in a poker game. I bid one wife, loved and beautiful. I bid one wife and 4 sons. I'll match your wife and raise you a concubine and the concubine's 2 sons. Oh yeah, well, I'll raise you another concubine and 2 more sons by her, plus 2 more sons of my own, and I'll even throw in a daughter. I'll stand with 1 wife, 1 concubine, 6 sons, 1 daughter, but no one is the winner in this hand. Amen. Nobody's winning, especially the kids. Well, then God remembered Rachel. We've heard that term before. God remembered Noah. God remembered Sarah. Right? It doesn't mean he forgot about them, but it means the Lord has turned toward them. God has brought her to his thoughts. God's attention is now on Rachel. She is now membered again with him, remembered. Well, I think eventually the Israelites learn an important lesson from these 2 sisters, because later on in the time of Moses, the old covenant law in Leviticus 18:18 forbid a man to marry sisters. I think they learned their lesson. So Rachel conceived and bore a son finally. And she says, God has taken away my reproach. And so the 11th son born to Jacob through Rachel was named Joseph, which means may he add. May he add. Rachel felt she had been vindicated by the birth of the one son naturally to her. But she longed for more children to continue this competition with Leah. So now there's a dozen kids. 1 of them is a girl. Only 1 is Rachel's birth child. 2 more are Rachel's legal children. 2 are Leah's legal children through the surrogate, and 7 are Leah's by birth. Joseph is going to become the most important kid in the short term. Throughout the story of Genesis, Joseph is the one that's kind of the hero through this. But in the whole story of salvation throughout the rest of the Bible, almost all of the attention is going to focus on Leah's boys, Levi and Judah especially. So Jacob knows it's time to go back to Canaan. In verse 25, and it comes to pass that Jacob says to Laban, send me away, I want to go back to my home. Give me my wives and my children. He's worked for Laban now 14 years. And Jacob, interestingly, calls the land still the promised land, my country. Well, it looks like Laban considers Jacob to be his slave, his indentured servant, and that the women and the children were his property. But Jacob points out that Laban's wealth had increased greatly during the 14 years that Jacob has worked for him. Jacob first came to the family when Rachel was tending Laban's sheep. And if a girl was tending the sheep, that meant there were no other males to be shepherds. right? Laban had almost nothing when Jacob first came there. Jacob had only a staff. And after 14 years of hard work, the flock has grown sizably. And it looks like at this point, Laban may have other sons. Maybe they're younger than Rachel and Leah, and that's why they weren't mentioned earlier. Laban learned by divination that Jacob had received blessings from God. This divination, this magic, was really common among the pagans. The pagans often consulted their false gods to learn about events. Well, Jacob now negotiates a deal with Laban. Starting in verse 28, he starts building a flock of sheep and goats for himself. And he's going to stay for 6 more years, giving Laban a total of 20 years of his life. So what Jacob suggests is very interesting. He says he will take the spotted and speckled goats and the oddly colored sheep. And there'll only be a few. There will be far less of those than the majority. I'll only take those to be mine, and I will raise the rest of the flock with you, and you can keep all the normal ones, all the ones that are normally colored. Well, the flocks of sheep in the Near East are usually white. The goats are usually solid black or brown. So for his wages, Jacob is just asking for the rare colored animals that are a little different. But Jacob has a plan. He's not just going to let luck and chance decide his flock. And Laban had a plan. He was not going to let Jacob take anything. Laban was going to deceive the deceiver. And in verse 35, that same day, he removed all the oddly colored sheep and goats and trusted them to his own sons, his sons that are shepherds now, and put them 3 days' journey away. And basically, Laban has stolen all the animals that should rightfully belong to Jacob. So Jacob would have no sheep and no goats to mate and breed to increase his flock. Well, in the meantime, Jacob is going to graze Laban's flock. He's still going to be the main shepherd. The agreement is made. Well, and this is pretty normal. Shepherding agreements like this they're pretty common. But Jacob had another plan. And the mention here in verse 35 and 36 about 3 days and 7 days, Jacob's plan is clever. It's a little strange. He's not necessarily deceitful or lying. He's doing something according to the agreement, but it's a little strange. And this mention of 3 days and 7 days, it shows that God is blessing this, that God's hand is upon this. Those symbolic numbers is showing the fingerprint of God on this movement. Well, Jacob decides he's going to use some sort of kind of superstitious, kind of strange thing to help the flock to have different colors. Maybe Jacob knew something of breeding the flock that's been lost to science, maybe. And there's really, it's like this is a very strange passage. Was it just the hand of God? So if you read that, it's quite odd. Jacob is going to have these pieces of wood that they're going to peel the bark and they're going to put that wood in the watering trough of the sheep. And maybe there are some substances, some chemicals in those particular woods that kind of leach into the water that make the sheep and the goats super fertile. And then he has this strange superstition that if the sheep are looking at stripes or spots when they're mating, then they will have children. They'll have babies with sheep and spots on them. Is this just magic? We don't really know. Nevertheless, despite Laban's manipulations, at the end of 6 years, Jacob has grown his flock tremendously and has become a very wealthy man. So in chapter 31, the Lord says to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers. And the girls are willing to go with Jacob. Rachel and Leah are angry with their father because he's so greedy. It looks like he has taken anything that could be the bride price for them, anything that would be a dowry. He's not leaving them with anything. If Jacob should die, like the women have nothing, they're not happy with this. So the angel of the Lord had spoken to Jacob in a dream. We're shown in verses 10 through 13. Here we learn that the blessing of this weird activity of the sheep and goats, it was revealed to Jacob in a dream. This was God's hand. Jacob didn't only use clever methods. Most importantly, he had the blessing of God. And God tells him, I am the God of Bethel. This is good for all of us. Remember your Bethels. Don't forget those moments when God clearly guided you, when you felt his presence, when you knew he was near. This is the first time in probably their entire lives when the sisters Leah and Rachel agree on something. They agree in uniting against their father. So Jacob plans to leave without saying goodbye. Okay, as they're setting out, it's during the time of the sheep shearing, so Laban is very, very busy. And Rachel then decides she's going to steal her father's household gods. Like, seriously? Why are you going to do this? What is this about? Well, the household idols were just small figures about the size of like miniature dolls, like a Barbie doll. Sometimes they were larger. Sometimes they were just made of clay or wood. Sometimes they were made of precious metals. These were believed to bring the owner prosperity and protection. That they were believed to be like literally the idols of their gods. And according to ancient documents discovered in Mesopotamia, a family's household gods were very important, were passed down to the principal heir. It was like the deed to the family fortune, because if you had the idol, you had the blessing of the family god and you had the family wealth. So maybe Rachel still believed that this idol was really her god. Maybe she still worshiped this idol and she wanted the idol with her. Maybe she just didn't want her father to use the idol to have any more advantage over them. But the theft of this household god could have been seen as spite. She just wanted to take something that belonged to him, or it could have been an attempt to get part of her father's estate. Regardless, she ripped off her father. They start to go across, away from the land of Laban. They're starting to go towards the Holy Land again, the fertile land ahead. Laban finds out. On the third day, he discovers Jacob has fled. And again, the third day, the fingerprints of God. And in 7 days, he catches up. Again, 3 and 7, right? There's biblical symbolism here that God's fingerprints are on this. At that point, it says that Jacob was not far from the Jordan River. He wasn't that far from the promised land. He would have reached Mount Gilead. Well, the reality is within 3 days or 7 days, there is no way he could have traveled all the way from the land of Laban, the land of Abraham, the land of Rebekah, all the way down near the Jordan River. Right? There's no way he could have done all that. This is about a month's journey, and with huge flock and all the people now that Jacob has acquired during the last 6 years, there's no way they could have traveled that quickly. So this is not meant to be very, very literal. This has to be, unless God himself moved them that quickly, the fact that they left and Laban caught up to them within just a few days, these days and numbers are symbolic. It's showing that God's hand is upon this. But regardless of the amount of time, Laban had a dream. God had come to him in a dream and told him what was happening. Yet God told Laban, do not say anything good, don't say anything bad to Jacob. Just be neutral, don't do anything. Right? So Laban catches up to him. Why did you flee secretly? We wanted to have a party for you. Jacob and the girls are like, yeah, right. So Laban threatened Jacob. It's in my power to do you harm. Why did you steal my gods? Right? This is very, very interesting. Jacob answers, well, it's in my right to do this. I have every right to leave. Like, this is my property. And by the way, I don't have your gods. He didn't know that his beloved Rachel had stolen the household god. So Jacob pronounces a harsh curse on the thief who took the idol, not knowing that he's actually inviting judgment on his own wife. Now this becomes a situation, I think it's a situation comedy like I Love Lucy. Can't you just see Lucille Ball sitting on a camel on a lumpy saddle, hiding this idol, trying to look very normal and dignified while she's about to fall off? And the really funny part is that this was, according to what Rachel says, this is like her time of the month, right? This is her excuse for not getting up and leaving. So no one's going to check where she is because she would kind of be ritually impure, even though I'm not really sure if the impurity was in place yet. That kind of comes later. But anyway, she's sitting on her dad's god during her time of the month. There's some irony here as she makes this false god unclean, right? So Rachel has learned the ways of deception from her father and from her husband. So Laban is looking for his God. He cannot find his God. Like, what kind of a God is this when you can steal him and sit on him, right? That's not a God that I want to worship. But amid everything that's sad and sordid in this story, God is still overruling and working the story the way he wants it. He's writing straight with the crooked lines of these crooked people. Well, the women take a stand and they define themselves for the first time as the wives of Jacob. And Jacob rebukes his father-in-law. In verses 36 to 42, Jacob just has this little diatribe. It's likely this anger has been building up in him for like 20 years. Perhaps in his mind, he's practiced this speech over and over and over, right? Laban boldly says, everything you see is mine, right? It's all mine. But out of the kindness of my heart, I'll give it to you. I mean, he's talking about the women, the children, the sheep, the servants. Laban attempted to demean Jacob publicly, but Jacob unleashed his anger against Laban, and he said, look, I stole nothing. I've proven my integrity for 20 years. I took awesome care of your herds. I never enriched myself. Every animal that was attacked or stolen, I replaced out of my own. I worked very hard in sacrifice. And by the way, Laban, you changed my wages 10 times. You were totally unfair. And Jacob says his God is the God of the fear of his father Isaac and the God of his grandfather Abraham. Fear of his father Isaac is a title for God that Jacob is giving. It's the first time and only time that term is used, the fear of my father Isaac, as a name for God. Well, Laban and Jacob finally make a covenant. So they're going to set up this pillar, this mitzvah, this watch, to be the witness to their covenant, because they have no neutral party. There's nobody, everyone that's there is on one side or the other. They have no neutral party to witness this. So they're saying, This pillar of stone is going to be the witness. And this pillar of stone is going to represent the dividing line. Jacob is not going to cross the dividing line and go back. Laban is not going to cross the dividing line and go chase him down into the Holy Land. And this is the end of what we hear of Laban in the Bible. It's good, the end of him, right? Laban is in the world, and Jacob needs to be freed from this man and from all of this deceit. So they make a covenant. Jacob acts as the priest. He sacrifices an animal. They have a sacred meal with bread, right? The covenant meal is so important and so holy and such a part of their culture. And they agree to disagree. And they agree that they will separate. Not all covenants are between allies. And here we see that maybe it's a good thing that you have distance between you and your in-laws, right? That you agree to never cross into each other's territory ever again. So as we end, all of this great drama, all of this heartbreaking, twisted deceit, all of this manipulation is a setup for a super important thing that's going to happen in our next episode. This is a big deal. All of this setup is building up to Israel being truly founded. I can't wait to share that with you. We'll see you next time. God bless everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for walking with us through this study of the book of Genesis.